Would you rather have a side of dog treats with every meal or a side of cat food with every meal?
Dog treats or cat food?
Cat food.
No, dog treats.
No, really?
Dog treats are dry.
Yes, that's what I don't like about them.
Yeah, but you just rinse it down real fast. Where cat food is just that mush.
You're going dog treat?
I'm definitely going dog treat.
I'm gonna go cat food and just pretend it's like tuna fish or something.
Oh gosh, that sounds awful. Would you rather have a permanent splinter under your big toenail
Ooh.
or have a permanent bad haircut?
Oh.
Well, you already have that. So you're living that.
Right. So I'll just avoid the splinter and keep my bad haircut.
Ew.
Oh man, that's tough.
That is tough.
Let's assume it's the exact amount of pain all the time.
Oh, then bad haircut.
Really?
Yeah, I don't need that. Right?
I think so. Bad haircut.
Bad haircut.
Would you rather have the legs of a frog or the head of a fly?
Well, this is easy. Legs of a frog. One, I can hop at an incredible rate.
It's true.
I could dunk a basketball probably.
Yeah.
And I can
could
cover them with jeans.
Right, you never wear shorts.
I can't. You got fly head?
You can't overcome fly head.
You're just stuck with that.
It's a life sentence is what that is. I think you're right. I think it has to be the legs of a frog.
Fly head. All right, so as you can tell, we're starting a brand new series, Would You Rather? So I thought it would be appropriate for you guys to go through some Would You Rather scenarios together. So let's start with this same question that Tyler and I answered ourselves. Would you rather have frog legs or fly head? Tell your neighbor, go. I'm hearing a consensus immediately, yeah. Fly head is hard to overcome. There's no hat that covers that up. I mean, the bug eyes and I don't know. All right, let me ask you this. How about let me pivot because now you don't have time to think about it. It's on the fly. Would you always be 10 minutes late or 20 minutes early? You're a bunch of liars because no one's ever early for church. Go 20 minutes early as you all stroll in, 10 minutes late with your coffee. Oh, church started? Oh, I forgot. Oh, Matt's done singing. Why don't they sing more worship songs? Because you missed them, people. What? Anyways, all right. Would you rather never have to stand in line again or have every traffic light you approach be green? I know, this is tough. This is tough. My blink reaction would be green lights. But if you've never had to stand in line, I will say I went to Universal Studios with a friend, and we had the VIP pass where we could cut in line and pass everyone. And do you want to feel power? Oh, my goodness. Woo, it feels so good to look past all the poor people who have to stand in line, right? No, it's pretty awesome. I don't know. You could go either way. All right, last one. Would you rather have six-pack abs for life or a free six-pack of beer every week for the rest of your life? And I can assure you, if you take the second one, you will not have the first one, right? Well, here's the thing. I don't know if you know this, but Jesus himself actually presented us in the Bible with some would you rather options. He presented us with some would you rather scenarios. Now, he didn't overtly ask the question, but in his most famous sermon ever, the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus paints the picture of two different lifestyles, two different ways to live. And by painting this picture, he kind of puts the choice or the option in our hands. And so he says things like this: would you rather store up all your treasure on earth, but you can't take it with you? Or would you rather store all your treasure up in heaven where it will last forever? He talks about, would you rather live a life of worry or live a life of peace that comes through the power of prayer? Would you rather shine a light with your life or would you rather hide your light? Would you rather be salt and thus be useful to God, or do you want to be bland with your life, boring and not so useful? Do you want to build your life? Would you rather build your life on a foundation of rock or a foundation of sand? These are some of the scenarios we see in Matthew 5, 6, and 7. And I would encourage you over the course of this series to dive into those three chapters of the Bible, the Sermon on the Mount, to look at Jesus' would you rather scenarios. And today we're going to look at one out of Matthew 7. Would you rather take the wide road or the narrow road? Matthew 7, verse 13 says this: enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it. So he paints us two options: narrow road, wide road. One leads to destruction, and the other leads to life. So which one would you rather take? Now, some of you right now are like, duh. Is this a trick question, Greg? Who wants to take the road to destruction, right? If there's two roads and I can take the road to life, sign me up for that one. Because no one's saying, you know what? I woke up this morning, you know what I want to do? Destroy my life today. Today's a good day for that. I just want to ruin all my relationships, right? I'd love to go to jail today. Right? I'd love to see just drama and train wreck after train wreck in my life. No one signs up for that, but what's interesting is Jesus says, even though no one necessarily says they would sign up for the road to destruction, this is the most populated road. He is saying that many people are on this road. And so we don't necessarily want to set out to travel on the road to destruction. And if we don't want to set out on this road, then why or how do so many people end up on it? My friend Jody says it like this: none of us plan to wreck our lives. It's just that we don't plan not to. You see, the wide road, it's very easy to find. The wide road, it's the way of the world. It's the way of culture. The wide road, you can get on it with no effort, no determination, no intentionality whatsoever. You don't have to have a goal. You don't have to have a plan. You don't have to have a dream. It's the default GPS navigation is the wide road. And when you get on a wide road, when you think about it, you can just set the cruise control, right? You can Hakuna Matata life. No worries. Chill out. Have fun. There are cars now literally today that will drive themselves. And so it's like we kind of put our mind to autopilot, don't we? And we get on cruise control and we're just living life, just going with the flow. And what's crazy about the wide road is you can accelerate quickly, can't you? But with that comes a lot of destruction. Because when you accelerate quickly, something that starts small can get big really fast. A habit can become an addiction quickly. One little flirt can lead to an affair quickly. One white lie can lead to lots of lies and lost trust quickly. This is the wide road. And it's amazing how then we're on this wide road, and what tends to happen as we're on this wide road is at some point something happens and we end up in the ditch. And we're in the ditch off the wide road, and we're like, how did I get in this emotional ditch? How did I get in this financial ditch? How did I get in this spiritual ditch? I don't know what happened. I didn't plan to do this. I didn't set out to go on this road, but it happens. You know, I was listening to a podcast this week with Tony Dungy. I don't know if you remember Tony Dungy. He was the Super Bowl winning coach of the Colts when the Colts played the Bears in 2006. You guys remember the Bears? That team that we were excited about? Yeah, we won't talk about them right now. Somebody mentioned to me I'm wearing Philadelphia green. You know what? Spite the Bears. I'm wearing green today. I hope the Bears win, but that's besides the point. So Tony Dungy, coach of the Colts, when they beat the Bears, and he was telling a story on this podcast about a friend of his named Chris Furster. Now, that name probably doesn't ring a bell to you. Most of you wouldn't know who this gentleman is, unless maybe you're a hardcore football fan. But Tony talked about how him and Chris were on coaching staffs together. They were really good friends. Not only were they on coaching staffs together, but for those of you who don't know, Tony is a very devout Christian man. And Chris was a Christian as well. And so they were in Bible studies together. They were in accountability together. They lived a spiritual life together. And then Tony retired, and Chris went on to become the offensive line coach for the Miami Dolphins. And that's kind of where your career ends, is if you're with the Miami Dolphins. So here's the thing. In 2017, a video surfaces of Chris in his office at the Miami team headquarters or wherever, snorting cocaine. And it was posted online by a woman that he was having an affair with. And what's crazy is this video wasn't caught by a security camera, or it's not like paparazzi broke into the office. He made this video himself and sent it to this woman. And of course, all of the ramifications came down. I mean, his life was now completely undone. He gets fired from his job. This is a job at this point, a career that he'd worked for multiple years, where he's making millions of dollars. Assistant coaches in the NFL at this level are making millions of dollars. His marriage now is a complete shambles, train wreck. He's humiliated. And his first kind of course of action after all the news breaks and all of this happens and it's circulating on social media is he checks himself into rehab. And Tony decides, I'm going to go visit my friend. Because that's what friends do. They stick with each other in good times and in bad. But as he goes and visits his friends, he just had to know, how did this happen? How is a guy that I'm in accountability with, a guy that I'm in Bible studies with, a guy that's a Christian, all of a sudden making videos of himself snorting cocaine and sending it to a woman that he had an affair with? So he asked him, Chris, come on, man. You just got to level with me, dude. I got to know. How did this happen? And his reply was so simple, and Tony knew exactly what it was and what it meant. He said, death by inches. Death by inches. One little choice, one little mistake, one little compromise. It's not that big of a deal. One place you know you shouldn't go. One relationship you know you shouldn't have. Death by inches slowly puts you on the wide road that leads to destruction. You see, no one sets out for it. No one wakes up in the morning and says, you know what, put me on the wide road that goes to destruction. No, what we do is we do one choice, 1 inch at a time. One little compromise, one little mistake, one rationalization. And as we make these choices, we find ourselves headed down a path we never intended to go. And when you look at the story of Chris, guys, this is not some pagan man. This was a guy who knew and followed Jesus, which means no one is immune from finding themselves veering back onto the wide road, including myself. We are all susceptible to death by inches if we allow compromise to enter into our lives. And I'll tell you this, on top of all of this, why it's so hard to not take the wide road is this is the popular road, right? Jesus said this is the road that many are on. It's the most populated road, which means everyone around you will affirm your decision to be on that road. Culture will affirm your decision to be on that road. Your friends, your workplace, your neighbors will say, you just do you, right? Just do what feels good. Does it make you happy? If it makes you happy, you have to do it. You're not true. You are not true to yourself if you don't do what makes you happy. You got to follow your heart. Follow your heart. Yeah, I do have to follow my heart to the road of death, right? Guys, it's terrible advice, but this is the way of culture. And we are so susceptible to this belief. If everyone else is doing it, it must be okay. Now, there are a lot of things that we see in culture and society that everyone does, and many times they're harmless, right? I was actually just looking at a list this week of things that everyone does that we don't even realize that we do it, and a lot of it was kind of comical. So, for example, when you're at a birthday party, and you don't really know the person at the birthday party, and you go to sing happy birthday, what do we all do when we get to the name part? We all mumble their name, don't we? Because we don't know who it is, and we're not sure what title they go by, so we all mumble the name. Or when we're in the car and we need to pay attention or focus, we turn down the radio as if it will somehow help us see better, right? Somehow we do that. It's something everyone universally does. We often will take a break from the internet on our computer to look at the internet on our phone. You know, I've been looking at this 13-inch screen. I should probably look at this 4-inch one. It's like ESPN looks different on the two. I don't know, but we do that. When you're at a friend's house and you go to use the bathroom and you can't help yourself, you got to look in the medicine cabinet, don't you? We all do it. You know you shouldn't, but you want to know how weird or whacked out your friend is. Oh, they're on a little Xanny. Okay. I thought they were high strung. So you're all up in their medicine cabinet. Or we all tend to overread eye contact with strangers, don't we? You ever notice that? You make eye contact with someone and you're like, what am I thinking? What are they thinking, right? And you start playing out these weird scenarios. Did they think I was creeping on them? Whatever. We all overread it. Or when we get in the elevator, what do? We hit the button like 57 times as if it'll go fast. It doesn't go faster. These are things that are universal. There are ways that we as people operate that is just universal. Lots of times they're harmless. And this is because it gets ingrained in us from culture. Just societal norms. And we see other people do them, and so it's like monkey see, monkey do. We see other people behave this way, and we behave the same way. The danger is there are some things that are not harmless. Some things that are the norm in culture that everyone else is doing, but they're not okay. And since when did the filter for making decisions in our life, when was that filter if somebody else was doing it? Right? And you remember what your parents would say. Well, if your friend jumps off a bridge, would you? Yeah, thanks, Mom, Dad. No one's jumping off bridges, okay? It's not helpful advice. I'm looking for some constructive feedback. But their point is that peer pressure shouldn't matter, but the reality is the same parents who would say that are falling in step with culture in the same way. It's just their behavior and choices look a little bit more sophisticated or different. And we've talked about this before. This is something we've mentioned here at church, but people in the Bible are called sheep for a reason. Now, a lot of times we hear that and we're like, oh, God loves us. We're his cuddly little lambs. And that's why we're sheep. No. We're called sheep because we're stupid. All right? Sheep there's nothing impressive about sheep. They can't run fast. They can't bite hard. They can't jump, okay? They're literally one of the dumbest animals on the planet. This is not a glowing review when God calls us sheep, all right? And the reason we are sheep, because what sheep do is they tend to follow other sheep even into destructive things, like off of a cliff, into a slaughterhouse. This is what sheep do. So in the same way, when you start to think about groupthink and us as a culture, why are we so quick to follow the crowd? Like, why? Why are we so quick to believe that the crowd knows what they're doing, that they know where they're going, when people are simply sheep? It's the blind leading the blind. Now, I get to a certain degree, part of this is just in that desire to fit in, right? And no one wants to stand out. Most of us want to fit in. We want to belong. That's why we have it written on our sign when you walk in. That's an innate human desire. It's an innate human need. We want to belong. And so because we want to fit in and we want people to accept us, a lot of times we let that become the motivator for key life decisions. But I would just challenge you and say, why does it matter what certain people think as opposed to what your God thinks? Right? What does it matter if Tim from accounting thinks you're a cool dude? Because whatever, right? It doesn't. And if you really examined the way of the world, if we were to do an autopsy on culture and look at how people behave and how people act, would we really say it's working anyways? If we were to really look at how the masses are moving down the wide road, would we really say that's the best way to live? So let's do it. Let's just take a quick autopsy right now in culture. Let's just look at the wide road really quick and see if it's working. If going with the flow and going with the crowd really is the best way to live. So what's the wide road that we see in our homes? Well, there's super high divorce rates. Parents work too much or too little. They ignore their kids. Everyone's stressed out, overcommitted. So many people are so busy that they're losing relationships. We're in debt up to our eyeballs. Thus, there's abuse and neglect, affairs. Most people at their dinner table, they end up just staring at their phones for 45 minutes, if they even make it to a dinner table in today's society. All of this breeds insecurity, anxiety, and loneliness within the home, which should be the safest place. So is the way of culture, is the wide road working at home? No, not really. Well, what's the wide road at schools? Well, unfortunately, students resort to verbal, even physical abuse to tear each other down, to make a name for themselves. Kids are lying, they're cheating to get ahead. We got parents cheating to get their kids into universities because they don't even believe in their kids. Bullying is epidemic. Right? Bullying is at an all-time high. With social media, more kids are more isolated, depressed, sad, and insecure than ever with a connection tool that's supposed to make us all together. So dropout rates are an all-time high. Crime in schools, all-time high. We have kids calling in bomb threats, kids bringing guns to school, depression, suicide. Did you realize in the next 24 hours, 3,000 high school students, high school, not teenagers, high school students will attempt suicide? 3,000. Is this a road that you're okay that your teenager is on? I don't think so. Well, what's the wide road on the weekends? Well, people want to forget the work week, so they drink. They don't just drink a little bit. A lot of times people drink a lot of it. And they party because they want to black out, or they experiment with drugs and they figure they got to live it up because we have this belief that we're invincible and the only way to have fun is to let go. But what comes with that is hangovers and bad decisions and regret and addictions, things that nobody really signs up for, but it's the natural byproduct to living that lifestyle. And so is what's normally happening the wide road of the weekend? Is it working? Probably not. What about relationships and sex? And sexuality is so broken in today's day and age, right? People go from guy to guy, girl to girl, do what you want, with who you want, when you want. If it feels good, you can make out, hook up, right? Sext, whatever it is, go for it. And once again, unfortunately, we have people with just no self-respect. They've lost their feeling of value. We've lost a sense of dignity. We have such a distorted view of the opposite sex. We view them as objects for our pleasure as opposed to souls who are created by God. Not to mention all the unwanted pregnancies, abortions, breakups, heartache, regret, shame, humiliation, confusion. Did you know 40 years ago, there were 2 STDs that they would treat on a regular basis? Now there are over 25. 25. We have, as a culture, had so much sex with so many different people that we've exponentially grown the amount of STDs. And so often we're like, well, God doesn't just want me to have fun. I just want to have fun. This is what feels good. No. God's not trying to kill your fun. God doesn't want you to have an STD. Like, God's trying to protect us. So is what is happening with the way we view our sexuality in the world, is it working? Is it the best way to live? I would venture to say, probably not. And truthfully, I don't even have time to talk about what's the wide road in business or jobs, or from corruption to scandal to greed to laziness to self-preservation to how people obsess with their images, right? Or how people are stealing or whatever, or how people are looking for meaning and just anything and everything because they don't feel it. And I know some of you are like, woo, way to make me feel good today, Greg. At church today, it's an uplifter. Right? I get it's depressing, but it's real. And we can't come into the 4 walls of the church and act like this whole world isn't just burning around us. It's lost and it's broken. And so we, if we choose to follow Jesus, shouldn't be so quick to just adapt to culture because everybody else is doing it. And now you can see maybe why Jesus, when he presents us this would you rather scenario, well, maybe the narrow road really is better. Maybe God's way to live really is the best way to live. Maybe, shocker, this Jesus guy knew what he was talking about when he came and presented us with these different options. And here's what you need to understand about the Jesus way. It may seem weird, and it's uncommon, and it is countercultural to the way the world is going, but it's better. It's simply better. And so often we reduce Christianity down to a get out of jail free card, right? Get out of hell. Just follow Jesus so you don't go to hell. And we make it all about eternity, and we forget that Jesus came and lived 30-some years on this planet to teach us how to live, right? To teach us how to thrive. God doesn't want you just to survive so that one day you can just go to heaven. He wants you to thrive while you're here on this earth. And that is the narrow way and the narrow road. And it's so much better. You see, the wide road, it's a road full of pain with no purpose. No redemptive value. It doesn't make sense on the wide road why pain exists, but on the narrow road, even if there is pain, it's full of peace because you know that there is a God who is present, a God who is with you, a God that is for you, a God who will redeem the pain in your story. The wide road, people are motivated by fear, insecurity. They have nothing to grasp onto. But the narrow road, you can be motivated by faith. You can put trust in God. You have a stability in knowing the answer to every question is Jesus. The narrow road, it's a road full of love as opposed to the wide road, which is full of hate. So many people are just looking for revenge. They're holding on to bitterness. There's people groups that they can't stand. We talk about all the people we're against as opposed to the people we're for. This is the wide road. But God's road, the road of love, is about forgiveness. It's about community. It's about belonging. And when you're on that road, that narrow road, the way you see the world is so much more different because of love. You can look at people through the lens of God's grace. The wide road, people are just loaded down with guilt, aren't they? And people just driving in guilt, going to work in guilt, waking up in the morning with guilt, because there's nothing to alleviate it. But the narrow road, we know about grace. And grace gives you a clean conscience so that when you wake up in the morning and when you drive down the road and when you go to work, you can stand clean before your God and other people because you know God has set you free. That's the narrow road. The wide road, it's that regret, that shame. But the narrow road, it's full of redemption. It's full of change. There's hope on the narrow road. The possibilities are limitless on the narrow road. It's better. So much better. And Jesus gave us this narrow road to control us, to restrict us. That's it. To give us a bunch of rules to live by. No, he did it to kill our fun. That was it. No. He did it so you could live. Live the best possible life. Because the other option is destruction. So this morning, as you look at your life, once again, Christian or non, doesn't matter. Because Chris, if we learn anything from Chris's story, many of us have the tendency to drift, don't we? Without living intentionally, we can easily find ourselves in the wide road because that's where everybody's at. And so this morning, if you find yourself on the wide road, is that it? Good luck. Is that the end of your story? Well, of course not, right? We know the answer, that with Jesus, you can detour. You can make a U-turn at any point in time. You can change direction. You can do a 180. You can pivot off the wide road and get on the narrow road. And so there are moments in life, there are these key moments as your journey in life where you come to crossroads moments. Where you come to these moments where you really are faced with some reality and you have to make a decision. Would you rather continue on the way you're going or would you rather change, pivot, make a detour? Wide road or narrow road? And there's this little verse tucked in the book of Jeremiah, and I love this little verse because it's so simple, but yet it's so practical. And on days like today where maybe you, as you're sitting in this room, you're finding yourself at a crossroads, it will help you figure out what you need to do. So let me read it. Jeremiah 6. This is what the Lord says. Stop at the crossroads and look around. Ask for the old godly way and walk in it. Travel its path, and you will find rest for your souls. Let's break this down here really quick. The first thing you do if you find yourself at the crossroads is you stop. There are moments in our life where we have to stop. We can't just keep going through the motions. We can't just keep going with the flow, right? And I get it. We get so busy. We get so distracted. We're running errands. We're chasing down kids. We got to get to work. We're running late. Got to get all over the place. I get it. But if we don't take key moments to stop, we will let life just happen to us instead of us happen to our life. It'll just start happening to us. We have to stop and ask this question. Is my life going the way I want it to go? Really? Is this really the way I want to live? Is this really the direction I want to go? Are these the relationships I really want to have? Right? If we don't stop, if we don't do the hard work to pause sometimes and take a hard look, we'll never come to the right answers to these questions because we'll just keep hitting cruise control in life. And we'll blow right past the stop signs as we're in cruise control. And we say things like this, well, this is just the way I've always been. This is the way I've always done things. This is the way my family does things. It's just the way we do it. Do you understand this is mindless behavior? But God gave you a brain for a reason. Look at this, 1 Corinthians 15. Come back to your senses as you ought and stop sinning. That's a pretty simple verse. Come back to your senses. What's Paul saying to the church in Corinth? Stop. Use your brain. Stop and understand the ramifications of your choices. Stop. Play the tape forward and just, if you keep going down the road you're on, how is this going to end up? Use your brain. Don't compromise. And don't wait. Don't wait for something bad to happen. Right? A lot of times the stop incident is something that happens to us instead of us happening. So it'll be like, oh, a health scare, I got to stop. A police matter, I better stop. Relational drama, I better stop. No, why wait for something bad to happen? God doesn't want to make bad. So often we're like, well, God, we have to hit rock bottom. No, you don't. That's not true. God's not like, oh, I'll make them hit rock bottom. He's not cruel. He doesn't want that for your life, right? He doesn't want that. We have to stop before we hit rock bottom. Then what do? We stop and look around. This means you get honest. You get real. You stop pretending. And do you know what you need to do? Me included, by the way. You got to stop rationalizing. We always have a good reason for why we do what we do, don't we? Well, I yelled at my wife because blank, 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 blank. I yelled at my kids because blank, 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 blank. Or I did this on my taxes because blank, 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 blank. We have all these rationalizations when the reality is we need to look around. We need to get honest, we need to get real, and we need to be honest with where we're at in our parenting. Be honest with where we're at in our spirituality. Be honest with where we're at in our finances. Be honest with where we're at in our marriage. And then own the part that we need to own. We need to do an autopsy sometimes on our life, which means you cut it open, look, and investigate. What choice is leading? What pattern, what habit is leading me down this road? This is why we pray this prayer from the book of Psalms. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you and lead me along the path of everlasting life. You see, we want God to search us, not so we're condemned, but so that we get on the path of life. And the beauty is God will show you. He will show you areas of growth because, once again, He wants you to thrive, not survive. God is for you, not against you. And so then we stop, we look around, and what's the next thing Jeremiah tells us to do? He says, you ask for the godly path. You ask for the godly way. You see, we should always be asking God for help. Psalm 24 says, show me the right path, O Lord. Point out the road, right? The path, the way for me to follow. Lead me by your truth and teach me, for you are the God who saves me. All day long, I put my hope in you. Psalm 86:11. Train me, God, to walk straight. Then I'll follow your true path. Put me together, one heart and mind. Then, undivided, I'll worship in joyful fear. I love this verse because what it does is it paints this picture that when you are in prayer and communion with God, you'll be undivided. So often we think we're conflicted when we stand at the crossroads. Well, I want to go this way, but then this way, and I want to make these choices, but this, right? Well, if you go to God, He gives you an undivided heart. A heart that wants to stay on the right path, a heart that wants to follow God, where you're not pulled and conflicted. And it was so simple, isn't it? Just ask God for help. Maybe ask others for help. But even though that's simple, it's really hard, right? Because we as people, we don't like to ask for help, do we? We don't like to ask for directions. Well, we don't want to ask other people to weigh in on our journey. Some of us don't even like to ask Siri for help. You think Siri's condemning you. When Siri talks back, you're like, don't judge me, Siri. Right? Don't speak to me with a condescending tone. Right? It's just our personalities a little bit. We don't want to ask because we're proud and we're stubborn and we think we can do things our own way. Luke, when he was a kid, when he was like 3 years old, he had this little phase where anytime he would go to do anything and he would struggle and you'd go to help him, he'd be like, no, I do it. I do it, I do it, I do it. He'd just say it over and over. Okay, little robot, you're freaking me out, right? I do it, I do it. And then you'd watch him not do it. Because he was, whatever it was putting a coat on, putting shoes on, he was not capable of doing it. And then he'd get all flustered and frustrated like a 3-year-old would, and then he'd be like, Dad, will you help me? No, you do it. Now, of course you'd help him, right? He's your kid, so you'd help him, and then you'd go about our business. He never said he was sorry, little punk, right? But this is us. Our pride, as it pertains to God, what do we say to God? God, I do it. God, I do it. God, I do it. I do my career. I do my relationship. I do it. And then God's like, okay, you do it. And then he watches you flounder. And he watches you get in the ditch. And then we're like, God, where were you? You said you do it. You asked, I come in. And then when we do ask, God will come in. He will help us unravel whatever mess that we got ourselves into. But this is what you have to understand. This is, to some degree, kind of like the base of Christianity. You can't do it. If you could do it, Jesus wouldn't have had to go to the cross. You're not good enough. You're not smart enough. You can't save yourself. You don't know the best path for your life. You can't do it. And so we need Jesus' grace, not just for salvation, but we need his grace to live the way he wants us to live, to walk the way he wants us to walk. And the beauty of our faith is that when we ask, Jesus comes in, he gives us the grace, he empowers us, and then he gives us this other gift. And this is the beauty of Christianity when done right, is he gives us the gift of others, a family of faith to belong to. That's why we say church is a family. You get the gift of others. And this is, to some degree, why showing up on Sundays is so important. It's a godly path with godly people to help you walk the straight and narrow, to do life God's way. It's at places like this where you get the answers to some of life's toughest questions. Like, why should my relationships be like this? Or what should God do when this? Or whatever it is, right? That's part of what community happens and what happens when you're a part of a church community. But it can't just stop on Sundays. Because if this whole world is on this wide road, we need to bring God outside of our Sundays into our Mondays or Tuesdays or Wednesdays, right? And we need godly relationships outside of church on Sunday. We need to be asking for prayer from other people outside of Sundays. We need to be asking for accountability. We need to be asking for care. Sometimes we got to lift each other up. We need the support of each other. It's why we join groups. It's why we go to table groups, right? It's why maybe you got to join a meeting. Maybe there's a meeting you've been putting off that you know you need to go to. Maybe it's counseling. You need to go speak to a godly, wise counselor because you know you got some things in your life. On your own, you're not able to do it. And you need the gift of others. And here's the thing, you don't have to be embarrassed because every single person in this room needs somebody else. We all need each other, right? I say this a lot, but we all are either a mess, have been a mess, or will be a mess. And that's why we need Jesus. So let's be there for each other. You don't have to pretend, right? We are better together when we lift each other up. And then lastly, in that verse, it says to travel the path of the godly way, to travel the path. So essentially what the verse is saying is once you know what to do, and many of you know what to do more so than you give yourself credit for, by the way. So when you know what to do, what do? Do it. Travel down its path. You know, Christianity is a lot more simple than we give it credit for. It's a pretty simple thing, right? We love your neighbor, follow God. There's some simple principles, but just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. It can be hard sometimes because it is a narrow road. There's not a ton of people on this road. It can be a harder road with hills and valleys. It's not popular. You have to have determination to get on the narrow road. On the narrow road, you may have tough choices, you may have sacrifices. It takes character, it'll take grit, it'll take determination, it'll take sacrifice. These are words we don't like in our culture and society, but here's what God says to us is if you're willing to take the narrow road, yes, it may be hard, but it's always worth it in the end. Psalm 1 says this, "Blessed is the one who does not walk in step with the wicked, or stand in the way that sinners take, or sit in the company of mockers, but whose delight is in the law of the Lord, and who meditates on his law day and night. That person is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Whatever they do prospers." Sign me up to be a tree. That sounds awesome. And notice it doesn't say life's going to be perfect. Doesn't say life will be sinless. That's not the promise. It just says meaning, purpose, vitality, prosperity, thriving, like a tree planted by water. A tree that's planted by water knows its business, doesn't it? A tree planted by water knows its security. It knows its identity. It knows its value. That's what we want to be, strong and bearing fruit for God. And so the choice is yours. What road would you rather take? The wide road or the narrow road? Now, there is always this hesitation when we look at the narrow road. It can be unknown for many of us, and that makes it freaky. And I actually get that. It can be scary to take that risk or that adventure, not knowing what that road really entails when you can look and see what everyone else is doing, and at least you can figure out maybe how to navigate that road. I mean, you think about this narrow road and following God, and you're like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know what it entails. Well, just because it's unknown, know that you can give your unknown to a known God, that he will be with you. You can trust him, and he's just asking you to trust him. And I want to show you a video of a fourth grader that's about to take their very first ski jump. And I love this video because I think it personifies what we're talking about doing something that maybe other people aren't willing to do to get the reward that other people aren't able to get. So take a look at this video.
I'll be fine.
Have fun.
I'll do it. Well, here goes something, I guess. Oh, okay, you can do this. I'm gonna jump.
You got it.
Whoa, my ski's slipping off.
Just remember, never snowplow, okay?
No snow plows.
Just keep it straight and you'll be fine.
Okay.
Same thing you do on the 20.
Straight. Do you go faster on the in run?
Little bit.
A little bit?
Yeah.
Is it any steeper, do you think? Not much?
Same steepness, it's just longer.
Well, just longer. Just longer. Just a bigger 20, that's all.
Yep. Have
It's a
fun.
bigger 20. Go ahead. You got this. I got it.
It's fine. You'll be fine.
Okay. Here
The longer you wait, you'll be more scared.
I go. Yeah! Just the suspense at the top at the first time freaks you out. That's the only thing. It's so fun. Huh? 60 seems like nothing now. Whoa!
That kid gets cocky at the end, don't they? Oh, it's nothing now. I love that video because to some degree that's our faith journey. There is an unknown, and it is the narrow road. But a lot of people aren't willing to take those types of risks, but those people aren't willing to also get the opportunity to fly through the air. And when you experience the joy and the life of faith in Jesus Christ, it really is a game changer. It really is an adventure. And so sometimes we just got to be willing to take the risk. Just lean into God, lean forward and trust that God's got us, that we're ready for this, that in Christ we can do anything. And so that's what faith looks like. So we're going to just sing a song. I know it's getting late here. So as we sing a song, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. Just ponder if you find yourselves at the crossroad. Ask yourself that question. Would you rather? And if you find yourself at the crossroads, stop. Take a look around. Ask God for help. Some of you need to ask Jesus to be the Lord of your life. You've been putting it off. You've been standing at the top of the mountain for so long, and it's time to just lean in and just dive into Christ and see what happens. And then travel its godly way. Let me pray. Heavenly Father, be with us now as we sing this song. Just speak to our hearts about what it means to follow you on the narrow road. In the name of Jesus, I pray. Amen.